If your household spends $5,000 a month, then the common rule of thumb for how much cash to hold in retirement works out to $120,000 sitting in savings. That is a number that makes people uncomfortable in both directions. Some of you just thought, I do not have anywhere near that. Others thought, that is money doing nothing. Both reactions are reasonable, and both are about to get a straight answer, because this is a question with an actual arithmetic behind it. Today we are going to work out what that pile is for, what it costs you to hold it, and how to tell whether your own number should be bigger or smaller than the rule. I am Susan, and on this channel we run the numbers instead of talking around them. First, let me say clearly what the 2-year figure is and is not. It is a rule of thumb. It is not a regulation. It is not in any law, and there is no agency that says 2 years is correct. It is a convention that grew up because it happens to line up with how long an ordinary market decline has historically taken to recover. I am going to use it as a starting point today because it is the number you will hear most often, and then we are going to adjust it for your actual situation, which is the part that matters. So, what is the cash for? There is exactly one job. When the market is down, you do not want to sell investments to pay the electric bill. That is it. That is the whole purpose. Everything else people say about cash and retirement is decoration on top of that one sentence. And the reason it matters so much is a thing called sequence risk, which sounds technical and is actually very simple. 2 people can retire with the same amount of money and earn the same average return over 20 years, and one of them runs out and the other one does not. The difference is the order the returns arrived in. If the bad years come early, while you are also pulling money out to live on, you are selling shares at low prices to fund your groceries, and those shares are never coming back to grow for you. Cash is how you avoid making that trade. When the market is down, you spend from the cash instead, and you leave the investments alone to recover. Now here is the part almost nobody says out loud, and it changes the whole calculation. You do not need cash for your entire spending. You need cash for the gap. Let me do that arithmetic because it is where most households discover their number is much smaller than they feared. Take our household spending $5,000 a month, which is $60,000 a year. Say they receive $3,200 a month between 2 Social Security checks. Say one of them has a small pension of $600 a month. That is $3,800 a month, arriving whether the market is up, down, or sideways. So the gap, the part that has to come from the portfolio, is $1,200 a month, $14,400 a year. 2 years of TH is about $29,000, not $120,000. That is an enormous difference, and it comes entirely from the distinction between what you spend and what your portfolio has to cover. The rule of thumb, stated as 2 years of spending, quietly assumes you have no fixed income at all, and almost nobody watching this is in that situation. So here is the first correction to the rule, and if you take one thing from today, take this. 2 years of the gap, not 2 years of your spending. Write down what arrives every month no matter what, subtract it from what you spend, and multiply the difference by 24. That is your starting number. Now let me do the other side of it honestly, because there is a cost to holding cash, and I am not going to pretend there is not. Money in savings earns whatever savings earns. Money invested earns whatever the market gives you over the long run, which historically has been more. So every dollar you hold in cash is a dollar not compounding, and over a long retirement that gap adds up. Let me put an illustration on it, and I want to flag clearly that the return numbers I am about to use are assumptions I picked to show the mechanism. They are not forecasts, and your results will not match them. Say the extra cash you are holding beyond what you need is $30,000. Say cash earns 3% and the invested money would have earned 6% over the same stretch. That is a 3% difference on $30,000, which is $900 in the first year. Over 10 years, with compounding, that gap grows to somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $14,000 of foregone growth, depending on exactly how you model it. Real money on a pile you were holding for comfort rather than for a plan. So now you can see the shape of the trade-off. Too little cash and you get forced into selling at bad prices in a bad year, which is the thing that actually damages retirements. Too much cash and you pay a slow, invisible tax in growth you did not capture. The right answer is not zero, and it is not enormous. It is deliberate. Before the adjustments, let me answer the objection I can hear from here, which is, why not just hold no cash at all and sell whatever I need whenever I need it? On paper, that is the optimal answer, and if markets only went up, it would be right. The reason it fails is that the years you most need to sell are the years selling hurts most. Run it as arithmetic. Suppose you need to take out $14,400 in a year when the market has fallen 20%. To raise that cash, you sell shares priced 20% below where they were. Those shares are gone. When the market recovers, it recovers for the shares you still hold, not for the ones you spent. Do that 2 or 3 years in a row early in retirement, and the portfolio has a hole in it that good returns later cannot fully repair because the money that would have caught the recovery is not there anymore. That is sequence risk in one paragraph, and cash is the simplest defense anybody has found against it. The mirror image objection is also worth answering. Why not hold 5 years or 10 and never worry again? Because that money has a job too, and the job is paying for the second half of a retirement that might run 30 years. Inflation is patient and it is relentless. A pile of cash that feels safe today buys noticeably less in 15 years, and a household that overcorrected into cash can find itself perfectly protected from a market decline and slowly losing to prices instead. So the answer sits between the two, and the 4 factors below are how you find your own spot in that band. Alright, let me give you the 4 things that should move your number up or down from the starting point. Number 1. How much of your spending is covered by income that shows up no matter what? We did this arithmetic already, and it is the biggest single factor. A household where Social Security and a pension cover 80% of spending needs a much smaller cash cushion than a household covering 30%. If almost all of your money comes from the portfolio, move toward the higher end, maybe even beyond 2 years of the gap. Number 2. How steady your spending actually is. Some households spend nearly the same amount every month. Others have a lumpy year, a new roof, a car, a long trip, helping a grown child. Lumpy spending is a reason to hold more, but hold it as a named amount for the known expense, not as a vague larger cushion. If the roof is coming in 2 years and it is going to be $20,000, then $20,000 is a separate pile with a job, and it should not be confused with your market cushion. Number 3. How you actually behave when the market drops. This is the factor nobody likes to admit to, and it might be the most important one. If a 20% decline has you calling to sell everything, you need more cash, because the cash is not really protecting the portfolio, it is protecting the portfolio from you. There is no shame in that. Knowing it about yourself and planning around it is a skill, not a weakness. A household that sleeps through a bad year with 3 years of cash is genuinely better off than a household that panics with one. Number 4. Whether you have another source you could tap without selling anything. Some households have a home equity line already open, or a small annuity, or a spouse still doing part-time work. Those things are functional shock absorbers, and having one is a reason your cash pile can sit at the lower end. Now the practical question I get every single time: where should the cash actually be? The honest answer is that this part matters far less than the amount. The important thing is that it is safe, that you can reach it in a day or two, and that it is not somewhere you will be tempted to leave it earning nothing at all out of pure inertia. A savings account and a money market account both do the job. Some people ladder short-term instruments so that a piece comes due every few months, which works fine and is more bookkeeping than most people want. What I would avoid is anything where getting your money out on short notice costs you a penalty or depends on market conditions. That defeats the entire purpose, because the day you need this money is precisely a day when conditions are bad. Let me deal with the refill question, because a cash bucket that never gets refilled is just a slowly emptying bucket. The simplest approach that people actually stick to is this. Once a year, on a date you pick and keep, look at where your cash sits. If the market has been decent, sell a little from the investments to bring the cash back to your target. If the market is down, do not refill. Live off the cushion, which is exactly what it is there for, and refill in a later year. That one rule, refill in good years and leave it alone in bad ones, is the entire discipline. It is not complicated, but it does require deciding once and then following it rather than deciding fresh each time under pressure. Let me pull the numbers back together with our example household. They spend $5,000 a month. $3,800 arrives from Social Security and a pension. The gap is $1,200 a month, so 2 years of the gap is about $29,000. They have a roof coming in about 3 years that will run $20,000, so that is a second named pile. And one of them admits, honestly, that they get anxious in market declines, so they round the cushion up rather than down. Their number lands somewhere around $60,000 in 2 clearly labeled pieces, rather than the $120,000 the plain rule of thumb suggested. That is half the money freed to keep working for them, and it came from 10 minutes of arithmetic rather than from taking on any more risk. 2 cautions before I go. The first is that everything I did today assumed a household with a regular income arriving. If you are retiring before Social Security starts and the portfolio is carrying everything for a few years, your situation is genuinely different and your cash needs are much larger during that bridge period. That is a different episode, and I will do it properly. The second is that I picked the return assumptions in that illustration to show you a mechanism. Nobody knows what cash or markets will pay over your next 10 years. Use the arithmetic, not my numbers. So your homework, and it is genuinely 10 minutes. Write down what arrives every month regardless of markets. Write down what you spend in a normal month. Subtract. Multiply by 24. Then adjust up if your spending is lumpy, if you know you get nervous, or if you have no other source to lean on, and adjust down if a large share of your spending is already covered. That number, whatever it turns out to be, is a decision instead of an anxiety. And that is the entire difference between a plan and a worry. Tell me in the comments what percentage of your spending is covered by income that arrives no matter what, because that one number changes this answer more than anything else, and I think people will be surprised at the range. I am Susan. Run the numbers, then decide. See you next time.